Petit autographe. Depuis le mois d'octobre, en fait, ce que j'ai
Since
fait,
October, what I've done is, first of all, I left the plant. I let it ripen. We had worked intensively for a week, and so it was important to give a moment, give a rest. I like to start a piece. I like to give time for the ideas to come in, but also to not fix anything too early, to let things take their place slowly. So that's what happened. I did nothing. And after that, I started thinking a bit on how to put it all together at different levels, at the level of the electronic, the sound material itself, more the construction of the work, etc. In fact, I started by re-listening to all we'd done, because we recorded many things, and to sort the things, sort the materials, pick out the interesting moments, verify that I would be able to rewrite, for example, when they were doing particular games, like how would I be able to write that on a partition. So an entire kind of exploratory work and sorting work.
une vraie relation sonore entre le son de l'animal et puis Moi, je me vois bien avec des grandes trompes et des grandes Par exemple, il y a des matériaux que j'ai
There's material that I left, very interesting stuff actually, but some because it was not interesting, others because they really didn't fit in the general idea, and others because finally they were so interesting that they would have involved actually changing the entire project. So I kept them for our next piece. In a piece, let's say that there's a certain discourse, like a main discourse, and then there's topics and ideas, plural, how to say, that are motors, that are locomotors, and that would make the musical advance. And there is a real balance to find between those ideas and different things, contrasting things. I work in a music where there's a lot of heterogeneity. I work more on putting events in relationship than on their unity, because like a lot of composers work, they have a germ and then they grow the germ. I start with very different ideas. I mean, it depends on the project, but for this one, and I try to find a relationship that links them, or the links that binds them. And there are things that happen that are very different than the main idea, but that belong. Now, if at one point they become too prominent, it completely unbalances the piece. So that's what makes me say, okay, no, that thing is magnificent. It's like it has unbelievable potential, but I'll leave it aside.
Là, ce qui m'intéresse, petite forme.
Before concerts, we have a period of work. So from the partition, it was totally written out, and from the altogether electronics that was also completely finished. And so it consisted in for the musicians to actually discover what I had concocted for them. And because it's an extremely rich piece in terms of playing and gaming, to refine certain things. For example, I have the memory, or sometimes I'd recorded a sound phenomena done in October, and they had sometimes completely lost the memory, so they didn't even know how technically with the instrument how to produce them. So we had moments of research like that, of things they had already done but they'd forgotten. And we also had moments of again of exploring because I'd written things that they had never done before in October, and that were totally different and new. So we worked well. We worked a lot. It was extremely interesting for them, for me, for everybody. Really a great pleasure.
Ce que tu faisais tout à l'heure, c'était ça? Ce que tu faisais tout à l'heure, c'était ça? On parle comme une grand-mère, tu sais. Le ou, c'est le plus intéressant. Ok. Alors, est-ce qu'on peut essayer avec tout le monde le même type de choses? Et je vais aussi enregistrer. C'est parti. J'attendrai. C'est bon? Ça tourne.
There's all kinds of adjustments. It's a sequence of adjustments. The music, we imagine it interiorly. We hear it inside. And after the first feelings around the kind of reading out that are often extremely laborious, and we say, oh my goodness, the piece is a total flop, it's terrible. But after, there's a kind of certain time of setting up, and we discover things, and it's the moment when we can still change things. So with them, we changed a few things, we perfected the work, and we were working in a space that was relatively small, with an okay acoustic, but that was small, and so we did more of a chamber music work. Even when we worked with the electronic, but when we came into the concert hall, it became all of a sudden, it took a dimension that was totally different. I remember they were playing when I walked into the room, and I figured, okay, this is a rock concert. It was all of a sudden, it become a big sound. Big instrumental sound, so big electronic sound, because we had to compensate the level with the electronics. So I needed a certain number of a certain amount of time of rehearsal to understand how to manage that and to recover that intimacy that I was looking for in that particular piece. It's a very demonstrative piece, in the sense there's a lot of things in there, but at the same time, it has to keep a certain sobriety, and I'd lost it, but I think that we managed to find it. So, in fact, it's curious because really a piece that we wrote like that, especially when there's electronics in it, I myself finally need to discover the piece. I don't really know it yet. It's, if I had to give it a name, I wouldn't know how to name it, what name to give it. So, for the now, what I know of it is that there's like an arrow that goes through the piece. Meaning that there's an element of a periodic, a pulsating element which appears and disappears, comes back differently, but is always there, introduces the piece and closes it. So that's a kind of an arrow that pierces through. So it's a piece that is a pierced piece with that vector. And throughout all of that, there is something that had not appeared to me immediately, but there's a drama that happens also between the sound of the instrument and voice. There's many moments where they're singing in their instruments. So there's a kind of how could I say, kind of semantic organization or the sense of references. As soon as voice comes in, all of a sudden it has an entire universe of semantic that opens up then. So there's that particular drama concerning the voice, the breath. There's a lot of breathed sounds, so the breath, the breathing. So there's moments even where I ask them to give a breathing that has some difficulty, like a groaning or something that has a hard time emerging. So there's that entire dramatic aspect there, but. And so there's a lot of events, a lot of figures, things that segue. It's a piece that is looking for logic, that is looking for a syntax or logic of segueing the events.
C'est une dictée, c'est ça?
Le mélange que je t'avais dit l'autre jour là, de gorge serrée aspirée.
It's a very beautiful project. Yes, of course, because it's extremely rare to have the time to have an entire week with musicians like that, and not any of them, okay? Musicians that are extremely agile with their instruments, extremely open also, with a deep knowledge of their instruments. So this time of exploration, to have that time also to let things ripen, settle, and then come back to finish, finalize things. Put everything in place. It's great. It's a great pleasure.
Voilà. Merci beaucoup.